Everybody, welcome to Crazy Tech Lab, and today I've got another video looking at the thermal performance of Nvidia's RTX 3000 series graphics cards in a mini RTX case. So we saw a couple of weeks ago the terrible performance in the NZXT H1, really poor thermals in that case with the RTX 3080 thanks to its flow-through fan being almost completely blocked inside. So not a great result for the NZXT H1 in that situation. Even undervolting and adding more fans to the case just isn't going to solve the fact that that flow-through fan is blocked. However, NZXT H1, obviously quite a niche case, very unique design inside. The case we're looking at today, the NR200P, is very different. Slightly larger, much more of a traditional sort of modern mini ITX style, with several orientations inside for your graphics card and cooling, which is going to be interesting to see how it fares up against the cards that I'll be looking at today. And speaking of the cards, I've actually got 4 RTX 3000 series cards. To start with then, at the front here, we've got the brand new RTX 3070 Founders Edition. Probably, well, by far and away the least power hungry on test. Also, it's still got 2 fans. You do have a flow-through fan, as you can see here. It does flow through to the other side, but hopefully dealing with a lot less heat than the RTX 3080. It's also a shorter card as well, as you can see. So you're looking at about there. So it's a couple of inches shorter. That may very well have an impact on the NZXT H1 as well. So I know some of you have been asking me to do thermal results in the NZXT H1 with that new card. I will be doing that at some point soon. So do subscribe and turn on those notifications to find out when I do that. And then of course we've got the RTX 3080, which we'll be testing in there. And for the other 2 cards that I've got, number 1 is this one, which is the absolute beast of a card in the form of the Palit Game Rock RTX 3090. So absolutely monstrous graphics card here, and in the case at the moment is its sibling, which is basically an identical looking card but with an RTX 3080 underneath, so slightly less power hungry, but still both cards have a trio of 8-pin power connectors, which is going to pose an issue in some mini ITX cases because your cables are going to stick out by even more than this card is wide. It's obviously a lot wider, as you can see there. Good, well, it's more than an inch wider than a standard Founders Edition 3080. So yeah, and just due to the size, it's going to be tricky dealing with it anyway in most cases. So what we're going to be checking today then is the thermal performance of these graphics cards, in this case, in both orientations. So as you can see here, I've got the graphics card in the bottom of the case. That's drawing air up through the chassis and basically pointing it at the roof, especially when you've got the flow-through fan on the Founders Edition cards. It does do that as well on these larger Palit cards. You can see there is an area where that airflow will need to end up going vertically. And the second orientation in the side. So you've got a vented side panel as well as a windowed side panel, and I will be testing with both. So it probably seems a bit pointless testing with the window because it is going to affect thermals, possibly quite significantly so, especially with the Palit cards because they're much deeper, so those fans are even closer to the side panel. Basically testing, so there's 3 results for each graphics card. There's the result for the bottom mounted situation, the side mount with the vented side panel, and the side mount with the windowed side panel. So what I will also be taking into account and recording is the fan speed, because what I'll be doing with the MSI Afterburner is basically ramping up the power limit and also the thermal limit to allow the card to breathe and to really push those frame rates. But you might see from just a temperature point of view that the temperature might be the same in different mounting locations. However, what will be changing, if that is the case, is the fan speed, because the fan speed will generally ramp up to try and keep temperatures at a certain level. So if you just record the temperature that you're dealing with, that's not really taking into account the whole picture. So you might be dealing with a much louder graphics card if the thermals inside the case are poorer, even if you're dealing with a similar GPU temperature. So I will be recording both GPU temperature and fan speed for you to check out and see what mounting location is best for the 3070, the 3080, and the 3090 in both of its 3080 in both of its situations, whether it's Founders Edition or Partner Card, and the 3090 version of the Palit Game Rock monster that we've got here. So that's it as far as the description goes, I think. And one more word on testing though is that I will be using a Cooler Master H100i RGB Platinum. I think I've got that right. So 240. Did I say Cooler Master or did I say Corsair? God knows, but they both start with C. Doesn't matter. Anyway, Corsair H100i RGB Platinum. Or Platinum RGB, whichever way around that is. I'll be using that basically because I wanted to try and get the best cooling possible in this case without using like some kind of low profile air cooler. I think if you're buying an RTX 3000 series card, you're probably going to be spending a fair bit on your CPU cooling as well. Yes, this can house reasonably sized or reasonably large air coolers, but I thought it would be fun to test it with an all-in-one liquid cooler because you're adding another 2 fans to the fray, which can only help with cooling really, can't it? So in the different orientations then, you can see here I've got it exhausting air out of the side panel. So the fans are basically pointing that way. And that should, I think, that's the plan is, for that extra airflow getting air out the case to actually help get rid of the air that's being blasted upwards by the RTX 3000 series cards in the base. Flipping that around with the card in the side, I've actually got the cooler mounted in the base of the case, drawing air through that vented bottom and basically pushing it upwards, aiding these 2 roof fans. So I am using the roof fans in this case, although looking at the situation, I may end up having to remove one of the fans with the RTX 3080 and 3090 Palit cards because the card is just so huge when it sits there, there's just not enough space to get the power cables routed past those fans. So we'll see how I get on later with that. So what you're looking at the end then is the thermals of the graphics card, how that relates to the fan speed. You're looking lower temperatures and lower fan speeds are better. And that's pretty much it. So all that's left to say is don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It really helps me just do this more regularly. Your support is very much appreciated. So hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you are notified when I upload a new video. And also don't forget to check me out on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. And I do have a Reddit group as well, pretty small at the moment. But yeah, those 3 first ones, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, are the main ones to see what I'm up to. Instagram is a great one because I post on there every single day with some crazy hardware. And yeah, that's it. So stick around. Let's see how the Cooler Master Case NR200P deals with the RTX 3000 series. So first of all, I thought I'd just show you guys around the Cooler Master NR200P, and it's full of stuff because it's actually home temporarily to some of my hardware before I switch it over to the upgraded Fantech Shift. Also working on another orange miniitx PC in the Raging Tech Ophion, which you can see a preview of in another video, and I'll be coming up with a video of that one finished with a whole load of cool stuff very soon. So today, basically, you guys are quite lucky because I'm going to be dismantling my rig temporarily while I test the RTX 3080 inside the Cooler Master NR200P. And I thought I'd just show you what I've done inside the case because some of you might find it interesting. So I haven't done a whole lot of cable tidying just for the simple reason it wasn't worth it for this short-term PC. So what I've done is basically you've got the Fantech's DDC reservoir going down there, similar one to the one I used in the Fantech Shift build, and I find that's a great reservoir for miniitx builds because you can kind of mount it pretty much anywhere really, and it's super compact as well, very slim, so it's much slimmer than the recent EK Waterbox ones. For now, I've just got an RTX 2060 in here, so I will remove that in a minute. It's actually got a normal screw in it, so I can't undo that while I'm on camera, so I'll flick over to the next video in a sec. And so what I've done, basically, I've got a Core i9-10940X, I think that's the one, the 14 core. We'll be using an 18 core when I go back into the Fantech Shift, but basically I really like the 10940X because it's very overclockable. And you obviously get those 14 cores. It generally keeps up
with AMD's Ryzen 9 3950X, but it's got a really high boost frequency as well. So even at stock speed, it's pretty awesome. And once overclocked, it's pretty good for games too. So obviously the orange PC build is based around the Ryzen 9 3950X. So I'm all for just building crazy miniitx PCs basically. I don't really affiliate myself with either Intel or AMD on a fanboy basis. I just like to use crazy hardware. So what I'll do now is just quickly explain what actual the rest of the hardware that's in this case. So we've got the ASRock X299E ITX AC. That's the only miniitx X299 mainstream board in there, with 32 gigabytes of Corsair 4000 megahertz SODIMM memory. You've got, I forget which power supply I've actually put in there, I think it's just an SFX 650 watt PSU that I had laying around, possibly Corsair. Yeah, so the system uses a little under 500 watts under load when overclocked. So the PSU is more than enough to handle that. It's usually a lot less than that if I'm just working or rendering or something. In the bottom, I've got just a 120mm radiator. That's one of XSPC's super slim TX series models as well, just so it allowed me to kind of squeeze everything in down the bottom there. And a couple of Corsair ML series fans, and I've actually got that exhausting out the bottom of the case. There's a good sort of 3/4 of an inch underneath the case there, so the air is just kind of blowing out. And what I'll do now is just quickly flick over so you can I can remove the graphics card. Okay, so as you can see here, we've got the brand new Bits Power water block for the motherboard. So there are two. Bits Power makes two. They had the previous silver one, which you can see in my video of the Fantex Shift. That's one I used last time. This one's actually got a small temperature sensor on the top, along with RGB lighting, and yeah, it just looks really, really cool. So it's kind of an upgrade. I've just been testing it in this system to see how it performs before I transplant all the hardware back into the Fantex Shift, as well as some other upgrades. So I will be coming out with that video soon. I know a lot of you have been really interested in it, but I just thought I'd show you my bit of a mess of a PC here, but also just like the cool stuff that you can do with this case. I absolutely love the NR200P. So flexible, and yeah. So I don't know whether I'd tie up the graphics card being water cooled in there as well with just a 120mm radiator. Certainly not with the 10940X. Because that can already get pretty warm if I'm rendering or using the CPU a lot. So yeah, that's the case. My temporary system, which I will be dismantling now, so we can test the RTX 3090.
So something I noticed in the horizontal situation with this, with the RTX cards with the fan on the rear, is that you have to be really careful with the top-mounted fan here, because it's super easy to get cables stuck in that fan. In fact, I've had to spend about 10 minutes cable tidying around here, tying up the cables, trying to keep everything out of the way, and even then I'm still kind of concerned about some kind of drooping over time and blocking that fan. So I'm kind of probably going to leave it as it is with this build, but the alternative to make things a bit easier is to basically get rid of that roof fan up there and just shift the whole PSU bracket up a notch. So at the moment it's in the lower mount for SFX PSU. Okay, so let's get on to the performance numbers then. And with the RTX 3070 Founders Edition, there wasn't actually a whole load of difference in temperatures between the lower mount, having the graphics card in the bottom of the case, versus the vertical mount or even the glass side panel window. There was just 2 degrees Celsius in it. However, if we look at the fan speed, the low and vertical mounts both ended up with a very similar fan speed of 1700 RPM, but if you add that glass side panel
you are going to see a much louder graphics card as the RPMs went up by 130 from 1700 to 1830, and you're looking at a slightly warmer graphics card too. Now moving on to the RTX 3080 Founders Edition, and a little more of a difference between the lower mount, which was the best result, albeit only by a degree, but adding the glass panel added another 3 degrees C onto the temperature. And once again, the lower mount was the by far and away the best location to have the RTX 3080 in this case. Vertical mount added a degree and a small amount of RPM to the fans, but adding the side window once again saw a massive upshift in RPM. Okay, so moving on to the Palit cards now. First up, we've got the GameRock RTX 3080, and the first thing that's obvious is that the temperatures were much better across the board, pretty much, than the Founders Edition card, Founders Edition 3080. So we're looking at a difference of 67 degrees here in the lower mount versus 76 degrees for the Founders Edition card. 73 degrees in the vertical mount versus 77 for the Founders Edition, and only when the glass panel was put in place, which basically hampers airflow, did we see the Palit card perform worse, which isn't surprising given its fans were closer to the side panel. Here, you're looking at 82 degrees versus 79 degrees for the Founders Edition card. However, looking at the fan speeds, obviously the lower mount in the bottom of the Cooler Master NR200P is by far and away the best place, the lower mount, to have your graphics card. In this case, if you're going for the GameRock RTX 3080, or pretty much any other card to be honest. The vertical mount saw a reasonable amount of RPMs added and noise, but if you put that glass panel in the way, oh my goodness, are you going to see a whole bunch more noise. The RPMs went up by over 1,000 under low to 2,700 RPM. Okay, so moving on to the final card now then, which is the Palit GameRock RTX 3090. Which interestingly kind of performed pretty much identically in terms of the movements in the graphs to the 3080 model, but the temperature is obviously a fair bit higher given this is a higher TDP card. So the lower mount was by far and away the best location to have the card, resulted in lower temperatures, lower fan speeds, and 73 degrees versus 67 for the RTX 3080 version of this card. Moving up slightly with the vertical mount, the card just seemed to prefer it in the bottom of the case, so the temperatures went up by 5 degrees. Very similar increase to what we saw with the 3080 version of this card as well. And finally then, with that glass panel in place, which is pretty much blocking those side fans, the temperature skyrockets to 89 degrees C. And again, just look at the increase in the fan RPM. So we're dealing with about 1800 RPM in the lower mount. That increases by about 200 RPM if you have it in a vertical mount, and but then you add nearly 1,000 RPM to the speed if you have that glass side panel on the window. So what do we make of how the Cooler Master NR200P copes with the RTX 3000 series? Well, I think it's fair to say that it copes a hell of a lot better than the NZXT H1. We're looking at very respectable thermals across the board pretty much, but it does depend on where and how you mount it. So the lower mount with the graphics card situated in the bottom of the case is by far and away the best location for thermals. The exception is possibly with the RTX 3070, which is a smaller, less power-hungry card, generating less heat, so it doesn't really matter where you put it, and even with the side window in place, the thermals were still acceptable. Moving up to the RTX 3090, the Palit GameRock RTX 3090, we're looking at a huge difference between those two locations. The lower mount, again, by far and away the best option, and still you can still have it in the vertical mount. You'll just see slightly higher fan speeds and slightly higher temperatures, but obviously with a lot of cards, just avoid using that side window because you will see the thermals and the fan speeds ramp up as the cooler is basically being starved of air. So basically, well done, Cooler Master. It's a great to see at least one mini RTX case that can handle these RTX 3000 series cards well. It remains to be seen how they all fare with AMD's new 6000 series. I will be getting samples soon, and I will be testing
the cases with these cards in to see how they fare. We don't know exactly what they're going to look like and how they're going to perform yet, but basically, if you've got a Cooler Master NR200P or you want to have a mini ITX case with the RTX 3000 series, the Cooler Master Case NR200P is absolutely brilliant and can cope in either of its orientations. However, you might want to reconsider using that side window, especially if you're using something more powerful than the RTX 3080. So once again, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video as well if it was useful. And if you want to let me know in the comments which other mini ITX cases you'd like me to test with these cards, do let me know. And I will be back soon. So thanks for watching.